All right, now it's time for the expert panel.
I have a question about the future of just working as a regenerator in our changing climate. So, like, we've over the past couple of summers and autumns, we've seen some crazy hectic weather conditions. Can you think of any innovative ways to sort of ensure that our human workers are able to keep doing the good work?
Climate change. I've heard of this thing.
Yeah.
If I hadn't been going so far over time, I did actually have a few paragraphs on climate change. I think this would be a really good standalone AABR seminar because it is critical. It's critical issues both for what we are trying to do and what's going to be possible in terms of regeneration, the timing of what we do, but also the work health and safety for the workers. It might be that there's more days that we just don't go out in the bush. But the important thing is, and this is why I really love Den's talk, is that all indicators is that we're going to get more wildfire with climate change, and we need to actually change, I think, what we do as a whole. This comes back to my governance issue too. We just need to manage our bushland differently to mitigate against these risks. And I think it's incorporation of any new innovation. And as I said, bush regenerators don't necessarily see it as innovation because we just do what works and keep on including the stuff that works. But we've got to actually make the decision makers realise that we can't just keep on doing what we're doing now and expect different results. But I think it'd be a really good separate seminar to have. What else?
Just maybe a couple more points on this topic and then we might move on to a different topic if anyone's got any other questions for any of the other panel members. So just wrapping up this topic now.
So we've got two internal regen teams and again, yes, they are full-time staff. They are full-time staff, but we're still focused. We've still got the issue of heat, rain, and what do I do with those staff when we've got these these environmental impacts on what we do? We can't spray, we can't even get onto some of our sites because it's underwater. So in the case of heat, especially we know we're going into the summer, the team will actually start earlier than what they normally start and finish earlier. When we know we've got a hot day, they'll work the morning, but in the afternoon, they will pick a site. They'll find a location where they can actually sit under the tree, do low energy use works like hand weeding. So we try and manage how the team works, what sites they can work on. And I know it might be a bit difficult when it comes back to the private industry. You've got your selected sites, but is there any way to discuss with the clients? Look, we'll work the mornings, and we'll juggle that way. That way, we're not impacting on our stars when it gets to the hottest part of the day. As a suggestion, and it might mean just more visits to that site and just half days though. So.
And maybe just to finish off, this could be an opportunity for further discussion, and that's multi-skilling. So often practitioners on the ground have amazing knowledge and skills, and then on those really hot days, if the organisations that they work for would allow any sort of job sharing activities, they'd be the perfect people to, collate your species lists, do your monthly reporting, support teams within council to go out and do ecological assessments because, they're the ones that have got that understanding. And so I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who are practitioners who would really relish the opportunity to cross-pollinate, to go in and work in other areas of the organisation where they can contribute that really valuable skill and knowledge and also push the professional development from the bottom up as such.
It's a burning issue. Does anyone have any other questions for our other panel members on different topics?
If I could just ask Mark, was it? Mark? Yeah. Could I just ask personally about the Mona Vale Road sites? Is it possible to just describe where those sites were and maybe even where the Bunnings site was?
Data sites were in Auslink, which is the corner of Forest Way and Monavale Road. And one is now called Nature Care, which is kind of a secret. And another one is, and a couple of them have been rebuilt into factories. The recipient sites are pretty much right near Kimbrickie Tip. And if you go to Kimbrickie Tip, it's above Kimbrickie Tip.
One side of the road.
Yeah, one's on the north, one's on the south. There is a mobile sort of relay station just nearby, and that's pretty much on one side. So in the picture I showed you of the three sequential kind of time, ones over time, the little asterisks that I had, the red asterisks, was pretty much on the mobile phone station. So they're right there. And when you drive along the road, pretty much recently it's got some barrier tape put up. In the past, there used to be these kind of like people used to park the trucks there and then throw stuff into the bush. And the other side's got an Armco barrier. So it's right before, it's basically just west of the Kimbrickie Tip turnoff. So I think Paul's got some idea about that. So I'm better walk and a talk.
Let's get the raffle. So yeah, transportation.
Please make sure you do a work health and safety assessment before you do that on one of our roads.
Question for Bev. We haven't heard much from Greater Sydney Landcare so far. I know there's a lot of changes that have happened recently. I wonder if you could tell us what opportunities with the changes in Greater Sydney Landcare are for people here on biodiversity.
That's a big question. We've had some structural changes in that the New South Wales Landcare Enabling Program grant is now funneled through Greater Sydney Landcare to provide the local landcare coordinators on the ground. So we've got, I think, about 8 local landcare coordinators now across Greater Sydney and 2 half-time regional landcare coordinators. And what we're trying to do now is, with Greater Sydney Landcare, what we try to do is focus on the bigger picture. And so on our committee, we've actually got representatives of all the main networks now on our committee, so that we're communicating with like Cooks River, Georges River, Parramatta River, Hawkesbury Nepean, and we're setting up some informal networks, and Andrew's on one of those, which is in the northern part of Greater Sydney. So we're calling it the Northern Landcare Network. So if anyone's in the north and they're interested, get in touch with me. I'm chair at greatersydneylandcare.org, so fairly easy to remember. And what we're trying to do is network everyone across Greater Sydney so that we're all working on the same page and sharing our issues, sharing opportunities to look for more funding. Funding is getting more and more difficult for everyone because we're not rural, we're urban, and all the grants seem to be rural focused at the moment. So, I encourage you to get involved with Landcare and, talk to our networks and the local Landcare coordinators in your area. So it doesn't help any of you guys that are outside, but our Greater Sydney Landcare spreads from Central Coast. So we've got representative up there from our Central Coast, and we go all the way down to Wallandilly, up through the mountains, not quite to Lithgow, but we sort of sometimes step over the boundary and work with the guys over there, and down to Sutherland. So, we've got representation all over the place now and trying to just bring people together to do big projects. So we do like the Southwest Koala Project. We're doing Cumberland Plain restoration with a whole heap of people from all across the area. Streamwatch, if you want your bush care group to or land care groups to get involved in Streamwatch, let us know. Other things, we're doing some landscape restoration work with Great Eastern Ranges, so a whole heap of different things. So let us know if we can talk to you, help you, do whatever.
So just to follow on, Landcare, particularly I guess in the rural areas, often had a focus on tree planting. Have you seen a shift towards more assisted natural regeneration? And I guess following that, is there an increased awareness in the urban centres of the role of bush regeneration? Have you seen a shift?
Well, I think as Landcare, we sort of keep an eye on natural regeneration anyway. But one of our projects that I didn't mention is our Creating Canopies project. We had 3 years to plant 100,000 trees, and we're in the middle of another 3 years to plant 200,000 trees. But being Landcare, we don't just plant trees. We've convinced the department that a tree is actually anything from 3 metres up, which gives us a bit of a chance to get mid-story into it. But we also always plant understory and ground covers as well, just to try and make sure they're habitat worthy and habitat connections. So with my Habitat Network hat on, and probably also with Greater Sydney Landcare hat on, we're sort of thinking more about, especially in the urban areas, how to connect habitat. So it is about looking at the spaces in between that Peter was talking about before, and how to improve those connections. And whenever I get an opportunity, I try to talk to some of these big developers and developments about trying to make sure they've got green corridors going through their development sites, not just sort of wall-to-wall buildings. And Department of Housing and Infrastructure that I was talking to the other day, they reckon that these big housing estates where there's no green trees are the thing of the past. They're the ones we're seeing at the moment were approved 12 years ago. And they reckon the ones coming out in the future are going to be much different. So the proof will be in the pudding. Yeah.
Thoughtful questions, everyone, but we are actually running out of time. So there's a few people I've made eye contact with, so I'll try and whip over to you. But yeah, we're going to have to wrap it up soon.
So thanks. I just wanted to actually speak to that question a bit, because I work as the Landcare coordinator for Lithgow Oberon. And in terms of doing the tree planting thing, one of the reasons we do a lot of tree planting out there is because we have really, really degraded landscapes and there's no natural resilience, like zero. So we could, if we could light it up and burn it to see what comes up, we would, but we can't. That's a bureaucratic issue to start with. But
yeah. I just thought I'd wind you up, Dan. But no, I'd love to. Don't worry.
But the thing is, if we did, we wouldn't get any acacias come out. We'd get more African lovegrass or Chilean needlegrass. So we do a lot of plantings, and when I do plantings, I always put in trees, lots of acacias, bugger all grasses, because the grasses will just get swamped. But we are often working really, really significantly degraded, highly altered landscapes. So that's one of the reasons, just to answer that question, that's why in those more rural areas, that's why we do so much planting. So it doesn't answer the question. No, it doesn't resolve it.
Just a couple more questions. Hello. I wanted to ask about success monitoring. I think part of what, for me, made Mark's story so powerful was being able to see clear results. But so often we get contracted and we go in and we do this work. You get maybe a photo, and then what? Normally they're like, cool, thank you, see you never. Or it's a 4-year project where you go back once or twice and you're like, that looks great. Can I see it in 10 years' time? They're like, no. So if anyone has advice or tips on how we can encourage our clients to do that, I'd love to hear them.
First up. I'm going to put on an old hat, which is the Environmental Trust hat, and I used to cop a lot of flack because of insisting on MER. It's amazing how many people can identify the things that need doing to restore the bush and know what to do to restore it, but hate monitoring. So kudos to you for loving monitoring. It's a big issue. A lot of funders will not fund for the monitoring, because the monitoring is something that has to be done for a long time. And so because funding is often over a short term, it's not done properly. Methodologically, SERA has done some fantastic work on the recovery wheel and various other methodologies about monitoring and evaluation. And it's something which we've talked about in ARBA too, about looking at not just the monitoring and evaluation of the response of the bush, but also about how effective we were at doing the regeneration. There's a subtle difference there. One is you could have a lot of effort to get the same response as having a little effort to get the same response. So we need to be as effective and efficient as possible too. Some grant programs through the ET, when I was there, we would allow 5% of the budget to go into MER, so we pay people to do it. But even there, a lot of grantees didn't want to spend that 5%. They'd rather plant a few more trees, do a bit more regen. So I think it's a cultural issue. We need to we definitely need to encourage more of it. But it's also, I think it's critical from a bush regen perspective, because there are so many doubters there, because we have had so many bush regeneration projects which haven't worked because they were underfunded or they were sporadically funded, and the decision makers go, see, bush regeneration doesn't work. We need as much evidence and proof as possible.
Also, the question is, what is the success? Because with my habitat network hat on, I know I was a professional bush regenerator back in the 90s, so it's one of the accredited, and I know we had to go and work on some sites where you cleaned it up, got rid of all the weeds, but in the process you got rid of biodiversity. So, is success having pristine looking bushland, or is success having a good biodiversity mix?
I think monitoring success is really important, and I think actually having a benchmark like a reference community to aim for is really important. I think if we don't actually look at how we do our works, we're going to keep making the same mistakes. And I think we have to keep reinforming ourselves and re-educating ourselves with new ways of doing things, but also just trying to make sure that we don't make the same mistake again. Sites are kind of unique. You might have a good skill set to walk from one site to another, but each site may react slightly differently. And if you end up learning a bad kind of practice from one site, you transfer it to another site, you might just be wasting resources and giving bush regen a bad name in the process.
Yeah, it's a critical point, learning from mistakes. I was wrong once in 1987, and I admit it.
On that note, amazing questions, really thoughtful questions. Thanks so much for your really detailed answers too. But we've run out of time. I'm going to have to wrap it up. So I'm handing back to our MCs. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you to our panel, and thank you to our presenters as well as for your time and wisdom today.